Hello and welcome to Growth Meets Innovation, Headway's approach to automating IT onboarding. Today's webinar is sponsored by Tray.ai and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from Actual Tech and I'm excited to be your moderator for this special event. Now, before we get to today's great content, we do have a few housekeeping items that are going to help you get the most out of this session. First off, we want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in that questions box in your webinar control panel. So not only will we have team members responding to questions during the live event, but we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we'll discuss in greater detail some of the top questions that you ask. A Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues that you might be experiencing. A browser refresh will fix most audio, video, or slide advancement issues. But if that doesn't work, just let us know in the Q&A and we'll provide further technical assistance. Now, second, in the handout section of your webinar control panel, you'll find that we're offering several resources. I'd especially like to call your attention to great resources from Tray.ai, including a case study about Octane, a page to learn more about automating more and integrating faster with low code, a Gartner report on how to prevent integration technical debt, and a page on taking IT out of IT onboarding, which has information about using Tray for onboarding and offboarding. So I encourage you to access those resources now and throughout the presentation, and feel free to share them with your friends and colleagues. Now, third, at the end of this webinar event, we will be awarding a $250 Amazon gift card to one lucky registrant. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for that prize. Official terms and conditions of the prize drawing can be found in the handout section. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll find the link with the details there. Now, finally, one of the best benefits of this event is the opportunity to ask a question of our expert presenters. So to help encourage your questions, we have a special additional prize for you. That's another Amazon gift card, this one for $50 for the best question. So after the event is over, we'll look at all the questions that came in, pick out the very best one, and contact that prize winner. All right, with all that housekeeping out of the way, let's get to today's fantastic session. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to our presenters today. We have Michael Douglas, who's Senior Product Marketing Manager at Tray.ai, and we have Alexis Lucido, who's IT Engineer at Headway. Michael and Alexis, welcome.
Hi, Scott. Thanks so much for having us. Really appreciate it. And thank you for everybody for tuning in today.
Hi, happy to be here.
Great. So thanks again, Scott, and welcome everybody in the audience, wherever you might be. My name is Michael Douglas. I'm Senior Product Marketing Manager here at Tray.ai. And you might be kind of squinting your eyes there when you see Tray.ai. We actually rebranded just today from Tray.io to Tray.ai. And but we're incredibly happy and thrilled that you could be here on our big launch day. But right now we're going to focus on this webinar. So Growth Meets Innovation, Headway's approach to automating IT onboarding. As I said, my name is Michael Douglas, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Tray. For any of you that aren't familiar with Tray, we are a composable AI integration and automation platform, and our Universal Automation Cloud is a single AI-ready platform that basically takes away the need for any disparate tools in order to integrate and automate business processes. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Alexis from Headway to introduce herself. Hey, Alexis.
Hi, I'm Alexis. I am an IT engineer at Headway. I'm our lead implementer of Tray, and I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about what we've used Tray for at Headway so far.
Great. Thanks so much, Alexis. And we're so happy to have you here and sharing the great Headway story. So just before we start, I just want to kind of run through the agenda. We're going to start off with an introduction to Headway and who they are for anybody who's not familiar. go back and look at some of the key challenges as it relates to onboarding or offboarding. And then we'll walk through kind of what the onboarding process looks like now with Trey, what the offboarding process looks like. And then Alexis has kindly offered to do a demo of their workflow and some of the integrations that they have. And then we will go into some Q&A. So with that, Alexis, do you want to just give us some background into Headway and the phenomenal growth story that you guys have had?
Yeah, absolutely. So Headway is a software platform that helps facilitate access to mental health care services. So as are in these bullets, you can see we have a huge mental health crisis in our country, and people are struggling to get the care that they need. So we make it really easy for therapists to accept insurance for therapy and other mental health services. And this allows therapists to have a lot more appointments on their docket without having to deal with the administrative overhead of credentialing with insurance companies. It makes it easier for patients to get mental health care services by providing a directory of providers that accept their insurance. And then we partner with insurance companies so that providers even get better rates because we're helping increase the volume of the number of appointments offered in general. So we've just last year we had a Series C raise. We have a lot of investment and we're growing really quickly. And so that's a lot of the growth that we're seeing as a company is a lot of what fueled our use case for Trey and needing more automations around our internal processes.
Yeah, and some great names like Andreessen Horowitz and Excel and investing, which I think lends a lot of credence to kind of the story that you guys have and what's going on in the States. So if you wouldn't mind taking us back, Alexis, to when you had first started and the challenges that you guys were facing as it relates to your IT onboarding and offboarding workflows and capabilities.
Yeah. So when I started, we were in the middle of a lot of hiring and we've continued to accelerate our hiring and our growth. I was the third member on a team of now 5 on the IT team. And when I started, anytime someone joined the company or left the company, it pretty much required an IT engineer to copy and paste information from one place to like 3 other places. And it had to be done on a very fixed schedule because there were a lot of downstream implications to people having their accounts created, to making sure that remote employees were getting their laptops promptly ahead of their first day. And with offboarding, we're a HIPAA compliant company, so the timeline for when we need to cut access for employees is really tight. So when I started, that was all, basically a human had to be really vigilant and attentive to every single new hire and exited employee. And it ended up, that one of the biggest headaches of that was, is it super time consuming? At the time, we were hiring maybe 20 people at a time. It was more that we were always having to be on alert because we are a fully distributed company. We work across multiple time zones. So someone could be getting offboarded at 8 a.m. Eastern time, and an IT engineer would have to be available at 5 a.m. Pacific, which is where most of our team is based, at the drop of a dime. So, then with every manual process, there's things that can go wrong. You can forget a step. You can, miss the notification that you need to do it. It required a lot of manual labor, and it wasn't scalable. It wasn't going to allow us to continue to accelerate the growth of our company that we're seeing today.
Right. And as it relates to the sort of complex manual workflows, I mean, what sort of, if you could give some sort of examples of the workflows that you're having to work through in order to, do a simple sort of task to request, a laptop or something for onboarding.
Yeah. So that one, for example, we only store employee addresses and contact information in very specific services. So that all that information lived in our recruiting tool. We have to be authorized to access that information and then copy and paste it to a secure. We use a spreadsheet that was authorized to be shared externally, and then we have to notify and contact the people who facilitate our laptop shipments that there's new entries in the worksheet. All things that have very obvious triggers that don't need and IDs that don't require a human to map the data from one place to another and then send a notification. So it's an example of just a place where a human had to be involved on multiple steps where it wasn't necessary.
Got it. And you talked about trying to sort of, you're hiring 20 people at a time. How is the kind of process impacting your ability to come up with it, to stay up with that growth, that level of growth rate?
It was really we have some solid senior IT talent on our team, and we were finding that with context switching and just with the manual labor, we were using that time and that resource just to fight fires, to keep the lights on, to keep the status quo, instead of being able to dedicate our team and our staffing to more proactive measures for making the user experience better, of interacting with IT and all of the applications that we touch.
Right. That makes sense. And were you finding that there was a lot of error? You talk about copy and pasting, having to take information from one data repository to another. You guys finding that there was a lot of errors that were being sort of filtered through to other systems because of, fat fingering or whatever?
It's less about the quantity and more about there can't be any errors. If we're terminating an employee, everything has to happen guaranteed. There's no wiggle room for that. And it's just, you can't guarantee that when it's a team,
right,
as much as you can if it's a computer.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's kind of move on and kind of see what the workflow looked like for your onboarding with Trey. So maybe if you kind of sort of set the context of, you talked about Okta before when we were talking offline about how Okta was set up as your original sort of automation tool for onboarding. So if you could maybe just give the audience a little bit insight into that, and then kind of some of the limitations or some of the areas where you felt you kind of needed help.
Yeah, for sure. So we leverage Okta as our identity provider. We're pretty rigorous about group-based provisioning and permissions through Okta, so really heavily leveraging Okta groups. But that mostly only extends to apps that support SCIM provisioning. And I think one of the key points about Headway is we're still really in the thick of this transition phase from scrappy startup, just get a tool, get something working, to now we're really trying to invest in the long term. So we're in the thick of transitioning from a lot of more flimsy applications or applications that support that don't have as many enterprise features to using enterprise grade applications. So one of the reasons Tray was so useful for us in this particular stage is it gives us this glue so we can plug and play between enterprise grade applications and applications that maybe only have a REST API to interact with. So we were leveraging Okta and skim provisioning everywhere we can, but there are a number of tools that, their skim provisioning is on their roadmap for a year out or something. So we need something in the interim to be able to automatically, like one example, our learning management system is on here, automatically assign new hires trainings that are appropriate for their departments. So Okta natively didn't push department mappings and also someone's a manager to our learning management system, but the LMS has an API that we were able to interact with using Tray. So Okta ends up being the trigger for a lot of our steps where someone's account gets created. And then for any account provisioning that doesn't or hasn't been configured through skim provisioning in Okta, we use Tray to map custom attributes to those tools. So that's.
And then that makes a lot of sense. And then with the laptop ordering, if you kind of walk us through kind of where you guys were, you talked about having to, have a spreadsheet and send it out to an external vendor. How is that sort of working once you implemented Tray?
Yeah, so now whenever, and I'll show you this a little bit when we demo, I can show you our Tray environment where we have these workflows set up, but we have a couple of now onboarding triggers, and we use those triggers to kick off a series of callable workflows in Tray. So instead of laptop ordering being an hour-long meeting on an IT engineer's calendar where we're copying and pasting things into a spreadsheet, we just check for new hires for every cohort when they get entered, and Tray copies and pastes their information from where we keep our HR information into this other spreadsheet. And then on the day that we need to order those computers for new hires that are starting, we post in Slack with a link to that spreadsheet and say, we have a new batch of computers ready to be ordered. And the third party just actions on that without any intervention.
So the HR solution is, what are you using for your HR solution?
We're using a cobbled together number of things. We just launched Workday, but previously we were using just a Google Sheet for this purpose.
Got it.
We would, our people team would move stuff from JustWorks into a spreadsheet that could be accessed by more than just the HR team, including IT, and then IT would take the information from the spreadsheet. But like I said, the address information comes from our applicant tracking system. So we would also pull it in from there.
Okay, so that's also
to get it from multiple sources.
That's also linked to Tray as well, the applicant tracking system. Got it.
Yes.
And then the Google and Jira story, how does that fit into connecting with Tray?
So Jira, for applications that don't support provisioning, like automatic provisioning, for example, like some of our internal applications or custom applications, we create a Jira ticket that basically lists all of the additional manual steps that need to happen as a result of onboarding. That's just another one of the workflows that gets kicked off by our onboarding trigger, our like account creation trigger, as we say. Okay, and then also make sure that we file in Jira that we need access to these other tools.
Okay, so based on their roles. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just generic. It's just generic. So like every employee, there's going to be some list of applications that they need. We use a tool called Lumos to manage access requests. So the Jira ticket basically says check Lumos for all of the access requests that are manual, that those come from Okta. But we use Jira as like the paper trail to ensure that we're accountable to kicking off any manual tasks in Lumos or any of the downstream applications that those applications are needed, that access is needed.
Got it. Okay. Great.
And the Google integration that we have, we use, also we open a Jira ticket every time we provision accounts. Okta will say provision them a Google account, but if we don't have a Google license, it just errors. And so we have Trey check to make sure that when an account is provisioned in Google, that it actually gets created. And if it doesn't get created, it opens a Jira ticket saying, hey, you tried to create a Google account for these users, but there weren't any licenses available. You need to go buy more licenses and
Trey is checking for you guys that you have a license available for that specific piece of software, which happens to be Google right now.
Yes, correct. Google's APIs don't work the way I want them to for this. I would love it if I could just check I wish I could ask Google, do I have a license? And if I don't, I could buy one. But it doesn't let us do that. What we do is check after we try to provision an account. We say, does that account exist? And if it doesn't exist, we assume it doesn't exist because there wasn't a license. And then you have to manually go into Google and buy the licenses. But it has reduced the problem of like there's an expectation, there's an SLA that managers and the people team will be able to put things on people's Google calendars a certain days ahead of their start date. And previously we were only hearing we can't schedule things on their calendar because a manager would ping us directly and say this person doesn't exist. So now we're able to real time, when we're provisioning the accounts, action this based on our service desk queue because we proactively get the notification instead of having to be notified by someone else.
Yeah, so it gives you kind of okay, you need to do this instead of just an error message, and you're like, well, okay, what's going on?
We don't check the errors.
Right.
IT has a million errors that we ignore every day.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense.
It elevates them to us.
So, okay, so that's great. So let's move to kind of the other end of the spectrum to onboarding, or offboarding. And if you wouldn't mind taking us through kind of previous to doing a lot of the automation with Trey, kind of what did the offboarding experience look like for IT, and what were the kind of core challenges that were kind of going on there?
Yeah, I can also I will show you this when I share my screen too, what it looks like. I feel like this was the biggest win we've had with Trey so far. So I think the biggest challenge with offboarding, like I mentioned, is there's just so much time sensitivity around it. So, and we, as the IT team, basically don't want advanced notice that someone is being terminated. We don't want to be involved in that at all. That's within HR's purview. We are just responsible for making sure that they can't access systems as soon as they're terminated. So it meant that someone had to really vigilantly watch a Slack channel at all times to see if a request would come through for someone to be offboarded. And we usually got them, maybe a couple of hours in advance, but sometimes it would be immediate. Like, we need to terminate this person immediately, and we'd have to action on it. So there were a few like steps that we had to make sure we did immediately. One was it kind of mirrors the onboarding. Deactivate Okta, which deactivates access to the majority of downstream applications. And then we would need to open up a ticket to say you need to manually remove access and deprovision accounts for all of the other applications that weren't deactivated through Okta. And then we would also send a push command to someone's laptop to lock down their computer so that they couldn't log into their computer anymore. And now all of that can be kicked off by the HR team. So we have a list of folks that we manage who are authorized to issue the workflow, and then Trey will check to make sure someone from that list is initiating it, and they can do it all themselves at whatever cadence they want. And then Trey takes care of the Okta deactivation, filing the Jira ticket, sending a push notification to lock their computer. And we've actually incorporated a few more steps because it's now that it's so automatic, we might as well. And one of them is like checking to see if they have a key fob to our office, which is something that didn't used to go through IT. It would have to go through another team, but we were able to take that and say we can just send the command to the access control API and deactivate any fobs and access to our physical offices when that happens. I think those are the
and you had said to me before that kind of one of the biggest kind of pain points was when somebody would have to sit on a Friday night at their computer and just kind of wait and see if somebody was going to be offboarded, and that there would need to be an IT action item. That's correct?
Yeah, like I said, it was 24/7 basically. I mean, reasonably, no one was ever working in the middle of the night and needing this to happen, but in theory, we did have to be available 24/7 to be compliant. We would have to be able to action those. So the most common times that it was really inconvenient are Friday afternoons, Friday evenings, which is a pretty common time for someone to be terminated or someone to exit.
Right.
We would have to have a member of the IT team make sure that we were sitting in Slack and making sure that none of those requests came through.
Got it. Okay. Well, now it's over to the fun part, over to the demo, which everybody I'm sure is very excited to see, as am I. So with that, I will hand it over to you, Alexis, to share your screen.
Okay, great. I'm going to share my whole this screen. All right, can you see my Trey workspace?
I can indeed.
Okay, cool. So I'll show you all a few things. I can't dig in too deep this is our production instance of Trey and can't, reveal our logs because that all has sensitive information, but I can show you kind of the high level, some of our workflows that we use. So we have this organized into a project called on and offboarding, and these are all of our workflows that live in that project. And a lot of these are callable workflows, so you can see, let's see, you can see where we call them. So this is, I'm going to go through the offboarding flow. I think that
Sounds
one
good.
is the most straightforward and the most impactful. So this is something I wanted to show you. I took a screenshot so it could be blurred, but this is kind of what it would look like in Slack when IT would have to action on an offboarding. We would get someone's email address, effective today, at the time, what type of worker they are. And so the other thing about this, is this comes in at 3:45 in the afternoon, and we have to remember or set up a Slack reminder to remind us, or set up a calendar event that we need to action in an hour and 13 minutes. So pretty clunky. And the way that I decided to implement this was just to make it so the people team who were initiating these requests didn't do anything differently. We're just starting with that. But it would just make it so that the interaction that they have is with the tray automation instead of an IT employee. So now what it looks like is this. It's the same thing. I actually can show you. I pulled up my little test Slack so I can show you how you can initiate it. It's a / command. You offboard and hit enter. And before you can submit this, it'll confirm two things. It'll confirm that you are sending it from, we have an offboarding channel, so that you're initiating the Slack command from an authorized channel where only people who are authorized to conduct and view offboarding information are present in that channel. And it'll confirm that the person initiating their request is on a list of approved users. So no one can like start this from, the engineering channel. It's secured that way. So we enter someone's Headway email address, and you select, the date and the time that they need to be deactivated, whenever that may be, and hit submit. It won't work, so I'm not going to hit it. And then what comes up is Trey posts this initial message. It posts this: a request to offboard worker has been submitted by so-and-so with the details of that. And then you can see that was submitted 2 days ago. When the offboarding time and date actually occurs, it will respond in a thread, which is exactly what we were doing here. We were just responding in a thread when we completed the steps. Trey will respond in the thread and say, we've deactivated the computer in Jamf, we've deactivated the Okta account, we've filed a Jira ticket, and it links to the ticket that specifies if there's any additional manual deprovisioning that needs to happen. And then these were the two other bonus ones that we've gotten to add since then. And there's, I'm working on additional steps that we can do to just more consistently and seamlessly provide an offboarding experience that's desirable. This is one, Google Drive and calendar transfers initiated to manager. So that was something we weren't doing. We were only doing it upon request, but it's helpful for two reasons. One, now we can reclaim Google licenses for deactivated users because all of their files have been transferred. So that's helpful. And then it also serves their manager if they need access to any of their calendar events or any of the files or folders in Drive.
Very cool.
They're fully owned. Cool. Yeah. They automatically get that transferred. And then this last one is Verkada is our access, physical access system. So it deactivates any key fobs, remote key fobs, or that are tied to their account. So that's how it works now. And like I said, it's we don't have to do anything. It all just works automatically. And I can show you kind of in Tray how that's set up just really quickly. One of the I think great things about using Tray, and they keep making this better, which I'm really grateful for, and I have more to add on that later, but is that you can really get a sense of what is happening visually without needing to look at the API calls that are happening. So hopefully you can kind of see what this looks like. So this is the offboarding queue that gets scheduled basically when, it starts with the Slack trigger. So there's the Slack interaction, and then we check to see what the Slack command is. We have one that cancels requests. So if there is an error in an offboarding request, the HR team can cancel it. That kicks off a different thing. And if it's offboard, that's what pops up the modal. And then if it's the submission of the command, then we basically, this is us getting all of the information from the modal and then putting it where it needs to go. So what we end up doing is putting it in a queue, the offboarding queue, which is another scheduled Tray workflow. And just like shout out to Trey, they had so many helpful resources for setting up a queue, how to run a queue service. So this runs every 5 minutes, I believe. It checks to see if there's any entries in the queue. And then it checks to make sure that the offboard time is within the last 5 minutes. And if it is, then it kicks off the offboard workflow. And then the offboard workflow is called offboarding steps per worker. This is where we just kind of pile on all the different things you saw in the Slack channel. So suspend for POTA access, send a lock command to our mobile device management system, deactivate the Okta account, do the Google Drive transfer, and then we're storing the confirmation that those steps completed, and then that's what allows us to post back in the Slack thread when it's done. And so I'm just kind of adding more callable steps to this little workflow as we're able to automate more things out of the process.
Great. Well, thanks so much for. Yeah, that's been awesome. Thank you so much for walking us through that, and I'm sure our viewers got a lot of value from that. But before we jump into Q&A, Alexis, as you guys move forward into your kind of automation journey with an IT lens, kind of what is your next kind of projects or next areas within the company that you're going to be focused on with Trey?
There's a few things. So we're still in the process of trying to drive adoption of Trey into additional departments. So that's an ongoing effort. We have some work in our Salesforce team to do some connecting of Salesforce with Jira and open up tickets based on customer events that are happening. But I'm a little bit farther removed from what's happening in other departments. For IT's focus specifically, like I just mentioned, we just launched Workday. So a lot of the automations that we built were based out of Google Sheets and just pulled together from these different systems. And we're consolidating all of our HR tools into the Workday suite. So with that, I'm going to be collaborating with the people team and another IT stakeholder to just like make this process like really buttoned up instead of initiating offboardings from a Slack command, because that still requires someone at the company to be online and posting that in a timely manner. We can use Workday as a trigger and schedule someone's termination and have that trigger come from Workday into Trey, and make that notification system for everyone involved work well. And there's a bunch more steps that we want to automate in and out of on and offboarding that we're going to be working through. My pet project is what I'm doing in my secret time is trying to automate some of the work out of our service desk queue. So that's like another big time sink for the IT team right now, is just like basically the ticket slog and, click just to close a ticket, like what category, what's the tag, rename the title. And so I just recently built, it took me like 10 minutes, which was so cool, with Trey's new like Merlin text categorization feature. Now Trey is adding ticket components, ticket tags to our Jira tickets automatically when they're created, and giving them an intelligent title based on, because they usually come in through a Slack message. So we have it parse the Slack message and change it to a more user readable title. So I'm trying to do some
Merlin. The Merlin AI capabilities, right, that we just launched today. So that's good that you're already using them. That's great. Yeah.
I was given beta access and was jumping at the bit to.
Nice. I'm glad to hear that you're enjoying that access. Okay, so great. Well, listen, thank you so much, Alexis, for all of your time and the overview today, and going through the demo. It's been really, really great to see how valuable Tray has been for you guys, and hopefully you're going to get more and more value as you roll it out throughout the company. So what we'll do is we'll just jump into Q&A, and if I can get it to the screen, there we go. Let me just check the Q&A box. Okay. Okay, the first question we have here is IT offboarding also possible securely, smoothly, and safely using Tray.ai as well? Yes, it is. You can run. Yeah. You go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I wonder if that was. I hope that some of the demo showed how that was possible. Maybe that came in.
Yeah, it was maybe pre-demo question. Another question we have here: what was the skill set needed to get started with Tray? That's what it is. I guess they're asking kind of the skill set of your team. Was there any kind of specialist training that you guys needed?
Yeah, I have background. I worked for a few years as a software engineer, which is, I think, useful. Not that you need to know how to code to use Tray, but the API interfaces and just making requests to APIs it's helpful to have some context about that, which I think was probably the biggest leverage I had coming in using Tray. But I would say that the other challenges to getting up and running and using the actual tool are really alleviated by the resources that Tray provides. So Tray Academy does a really good job of walking you through the functionality. And I, the first few weeks I was using it, I didn't feel intuitive to me at all. But going through Tray Academy and getting familiar, working with some folks on the Tray team, made it you get familiar with how to use the tool really efficiently. So I think at my company, I'm most extensively using Tray. It's not being used very heavily by other folks on my team, and I think that's largely because of some of the context around just how to communicate with APIs and connect data.
I see. Got it. And then there's another question in here. How is it looked at internally? Now let me read this. How did the the HR department kind of moving it across to, the offboarding and that into them? Was there kind of any pushback from that? What was the kind of experience of doing that?
No, so one of the reasons I'm in the IT profession is I think there's many things that get to be a win-win for both our work and the stakeholders, and automations are such a great example of that. Like the HR team didn't want to have a dependency on another human to make sure that all of their onboarding and offboarding tasks were being completed at the time they expected. So, and like I said, I built it in a way that didn't change how they interacted at all. It was posting the same information in the same Slack channel. It was just being responded to by a more consistent creature than the human employees that were responding to it before. I also think, having relationships with HR and other internal operations teams is really important for IT. So we have a lot of stakeholder conversations and input and touch points with them to make sure that what they are hoping for is being met by what we're building.
Got it. Okay, great. Well, I think we will leave it there. I'd like to thank you again, Alexis, for all of the great input. And we really, really appreciate your time. I know you're very busy. And I'd like to thank our audience for tuning in today. We hope you got a lot of value from it. I know there's going to be a number of handouts distributed around this case study, other case studies, other important information as it relates to Trey. But thank you again for your time.
All right, great. Yeah, that was fantastic presentation there from Michael and Alexis, and it was great to see inside Alexis' implementation of Trey there. So thanks for all that, for the insights in the Q&A. Really appreciate your time today. And before we wrap up, we do have one more piece of business, and that is the Amazon gift card prize drawing. And the winner of the gift card is Sarah Wanstrath from North Carolina. So congratulations to Sarah. We'll be in touch to get you your card. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Trey AI for making this event possible. And thanks as always for attending and for your great questions. That's going to conclude today's event. Have a fantastic rest of your day.